Are we recording? Is this thing on?
Yes, it is. Welcome to RevOps 500, where we invite the world's top marketers to answer the tough questions facing growing organizations.
Ooh, sounds important.
I'm Sajeel Qureshi.
And I'm Gil Pei. Join us as we dive deep into the world of RevOps.
We'll be learning strategies and expertise from first-hand experience. RevOps 500 is sponsored by Computan. They provide technical and development expertise to growth-focused marketing.
Let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Sajeel Qureshi here with another episode of RevOps 500, where we interview the latest and greatest RevOps marketing experts in the world. Today, I can't tell you how excited I am. We have a HubSpot expert, a cross-cultural branding strategist. He's a marketing leader in science and technology. He's always been focused on improving bottom line performance and delivery of results. He's an incredibly passionate storyteller if you ever get a chance to talk to him. Right now, he's the head of marketing at Karger Publishers, and he's a senior advisor at Global Marketing Ventures. Mitja-Alexander Linss, welcome to RevOps 500.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So anyways, let's just jump right into it. So Mitja, in your view, what is one RevOps myth that you can share with us today?
Well, I not only have one, I have two for you.
Oh, wow.
So let's start with the first one. I think if you define RevOps as the integration of sales, marketing, customer service, which is to provide a better end-to-end solutions for customers, I think the first one is just by renaming departments and workflows, you don't break down silos, right? So it's incredibly important that you really break down barriers, align cross-functional teams, and restructure workflows along the value chain. And in practice, I've experienced how hard that is, right? And it's something that has had different names before. It's in the context of growth hacking. It's important to really enable cross-functional teams, break down silos, with a minimum of ego and a maximum of transparency in communications. And that's when you're really going to see impact of teams really working together. Whether you call that RevOps or not is perhaps semantics, right? And so that's, in my experience, that's been really important, breaking down silence and creating a cross-functional team environment if you want to have an impact.
So Mattia, let's talk a bit more about the silos part of it.
Right.
Now, we hear that term a lot used, reduce the customer friction and break down the silos. What exactly is an example of a silo that you would say RevOps would have to break down?
Well, sales and marketing doing their own thing in their own departments, in their own groups. Most importantly, not communicating to each other, how they communicate to the customer, how they really put the customer in the center. And that lack of transparency is what silos are all about. And I see it so often, even in small companies. I've worked in startups. You would think that everybody is aligned and you have a small team and everybody works with each other. But in reality, silos even exist there. And it's all about transparency and communication. And here's the second myth for you. RevOps alone won't drive customer centricity. And because I think becoming truly customer centric requires change in mindset, most of all, right? And that's the other thing that's important, really putting your customer front and center in your thinking. The readiness to put a single focus on customer value and going above and beyond and meeting customer requirements, making this almost a religion. And I'm really saying it that way. It really has to be the priority about everything else. And if you do that as an organization, everything will fall into place. A lot of other things will automatically fall into place. And that's really the most important thing. And if you can do that in a RevOps environment, that's helpful, of course. Integration and alignment of teams are helpful, but what's truly going to help you change and build a customer-centric organization is a mindset change. There's an example for that. You've said it in your intro. I'm a fan of HubSpot. I love to use it across the board for marketing automation and CRM. And take the case of HubSpot as a company. What they have done is they have had a single focus on the customer and have to that day. And they've sort of really rolled it out across their departments. Everything they do is focused on customer. And you can feel it. If you interact with them, if you talk to them, if you have touch points with them, you feel the difference. And that is what is most important. And that's what's really important in terms of being customer centric. And I believe being customer centric is an important part of revenue operations.
So you talk about, the touch points, you talk about, RevOps being almost like a religion, a school of thought.
Yeah.
It's more like
customer centricity. I mean, there is, if we define customer centricity as big part of RevOps, then yes.
So, let's talk about what that looks like technically. Talk
Right.
about HubSpot and the touch points, whatever. What does that look like, in your organization?
Right. So we've taken a number of steps to really achieve customer centricity at Karger. And for your viewers who don't know it, just a quick introduction. Karger is a medical publisher. We publish about 110 scientific journals. We're engaged in the scientific peer review of journals. We sell about 9,000 books, and we are really focused on health science and medical science. But we're also focused on patient engagement and working with pharmaceutical companies to popular non scientific medical content. So I think for us, customer centricity really starts with a messaging, with a story, with an alignment on the story behind everything. I think that drives everything else. And it was important for us to create a new story to really align the key stakeholders around that story. And the most important thing was, what do we solve for the customer? The customer really has to understand that. And we've done a good job in the past. We have a long tradition. We're a family-owned business by the Karger family that goes back to a few decades, and even, till the 1800s. And so we have a long history in medical publishing. But what has to be clear to the customers is what we have done in the past and what we are doing going forward. How are we going to evolve? What are the services they can expect from us? And what's the evolution? And that's the part of the story that had to be really, really clarified. And that's one step we have taken to really clarify that and make that clear for the customer. The other thing that we're doing is we're really focused on voice of the customer. We have created an initiative around, letting the customer tell the story for themselves, because there's no more powerful tool in marketing than letting the customers speak and letting the customers tell the story. If you enable them to do that across channels, it's going to help everything you're doing. So, and we're trying to do that. We're interviewing customers. We're speaking with customers about their experiences and how we can improve them. We do customer testimonials and case studies. And that's a big initiative that we kicked off because we didn't do much before. And I think, there are lots of other organizations, startups or established organizations that can do more in that respect. And if they really take it seriously, that aspect of customer communications, it's going to be really surprising what they will find. And this seems like a really basic thing to do. But it's one of the most impactful things there is in marketing. One other aspect I'd like to quickly mention, of course, it's important to also look at customer data. And we do that at Karger by, funneling data through scattered systems that we have across the organization, such as Manuscript Manager, which is an application where we track our author submissions, and some other, production-facing data, and we're putting them into a data warehousing strategy to make them available in Salesforce CRM. We use Salesforce CRM across the board. So Salesforce CRM is really the single source of truth for us to make that data available so we can really make decisions based on customer behavior in the future. And that's another important element of this.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've talked about, having the customer tell the story, having them be truly customer centric, the marketing leads with what the customer is looking for. Now, and you mentioned your CRM and those sorts of things. What, when it comes to the implementation of something like this, I know there's a story there, but when it comes to the implementation of this technically, are there things right now that keep you up at night, technically in terms of like setting these things up and workflows and custom objects and stuff like that? I mean, how do you handle all this?
There's a lot of things that keep me up at night, but fortunately not too many around data. It's really the fragmentation of data that is challenging. And I'm sure I'm not the first one on your show or in any show to say that. First marketer, it's bringing data together. That's really the challenging part. As I said, Salesforce CRM is the backbone, but we have a lot of scattered applications across the board because we use different systems, especially as a publisher. We have different audiences. We have authors. We have institutions. We have librarians. We have industry customers. Some of these, for our production, we use different systems. I already mentioned Manuscript Manager. So sometimes basic data availability is not as straightforward as you would think, and as you would perhaps see in an enterprise or a SaaS startup operation that uses a much more harmonized a data approach. So the fragmentation of data keeps me up a little bit, because in the end, it's harder to put the data together and to form a picture in terms of what the customer really wants and map out these customer touch points that I was talking about. That is also really, really important in that context. So we are taking steps to address that. As I said, we've created a data warehousing approach to bring that data together, but it's a tough process, and it's not as straightforward sometimes as you would like to think from an operational standpoint. At least from an operations standpoint, we do use Pardot as part of Salesforce CRM. So that's pretty much streamlined. We're bringing things together there to be more impactful in our operations. And we've also included Google Data Studios that brings in Google Analytics traffic, sort of to make these informed decisions. But it really comes down to making data centrally available as the big challenge, which again, I'm sure I'm not alone here. Other marketers are facing the exact same challenge. And whether you use Salesforce CRM or HubSpot or something else, it doesn't matter. Bringing it all together in the central place where you can analyze the data is the challenge.
Exactly. So how do you get the data to be from, you say data fragmentation keeps you up at night? How do you get the data to be centered? How do you go about doing it?
Well, as I said, we have a data warehouse concept. We're working together with our IT team, where we actually take the data from existing systems that we use and make them aware in a data warehouse, so Salesforce can actually access this data. In a first step, we'll have about our really important author data in there. So it's almost 500,000 of data sets of authors and reviewers. And step by step, we'll be able to see trends, and we'll be able to make decisions based on their behavior in terms of submissions, when they submitted. And when I say submission, I mean a submission for a paper, for a research that's submitted for us for publishing, for the peer review process. That's a revenue source for us. So essentially, that's what we're trying to do, to make that data available in Salesforce so we actually can make informed decisions based on the actions that they have taken. And again, a lot of this sounds like a really basic thing where a lot of marketers would say, well, that's obvious. But in practice, it's a hard thing to bring the data together.
So yeah, obviously an IT team can work on that. There might be some programming involved. I mean, and this is all done in the name of, RevOps, customer centricity, those sorts of things. You have more information, you can make more informed decisions, you can service people better.
Right.
But so let's talk a bit about customer centricity and the future of it.
Right.
Obviously, that's been you can look at organizations for years have been solving for the customer or trying to. There are some business case studies that people talk about all the time. There are businesses that do this stuff. Do you see the future of customer centricity and RevOps changing at all in any way, or how do you feel like that's going to play out?
Well, I think I think we're going to see much more focus on the customer because I think it's a necessary thing to happen, right? If there's also new technologies such as AI that enable us to be much more customer focused and centric in the future. I don't want to talk about ChatGPT and others because a lot of people talk about it and I don't want to contribute to that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this. But, the use of AI technologies and better technologies in terms of CRM, in terms of marketing automation, really enables people and enables operations and companies to put customers front and center. It's really easy these days. When I see how difficult, despite the data fragmentation that I mentioned, how difficult it was 5 years ago or even 10 years ago to do these things. But now you have the technology that helps you enable it. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this customer centricity come out. But the other thing is a mindset. I'm going to go back to the mindset. And I think it's just, there is a large share of organizations out there that say of themselves that they're customer centric. But when it comes to, it's a matter of prioritization again, right? How you prioritize internally. And as an organization, if you really make the decision to put customers first, and in a lot of ways, a lot of organizations don't do that. I think the market going forward and the adoption of technology will sort of force an alignment on the customer. Because, it's also the way today you orchestrate demand generation. It's about community building. It's not about demand capture anymore. There's an informed audience out there, at least from a B2B perspective. They make their own buying decisions. They're well informed. So the best you can do is adopt a customer-centric approach and serve customers well and serve prospects who have buying intent very well. And if you do that well or above average, as I said before, a lot of other things will fall into place. So I think we're going to see a move to more customer centricity, partly driven by markets and partly driven by technology.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of RevOps 500. This podcast is a great opportunity and channel for revenue operations and much more. If you've been thinking about a podcast or you want to shift production to a friendly team, check out ringmaster.com. They're the team behind this podcast. RevOps 500 is sponsored by Computan. Computan serves as the back-end dev and technology team for shorthanded marketing agencies and departments. Shorthanded? Wait a minute, that sounds like me. Now, let's get back to it. The end.
More and more people adapting a customer-centric view, not on paper, but in practice.
In doing it, because on paper, everyone does. Who will go out there and say they're not customer-centric? Of course, everybody will claim it, right? But the question is, how are they doing it? How are they prioritizing from a technology perspective and also from a mindset and from an organizational perspective? I want to come back to the cross-functional aspect that I mentioned earlier, which is really, really important. Bringing cross-functional teams together. Again, growth hacking is all about, been books written about growth hacking. It's all about bringing cross-functional teams together and bringing expertise together, right? And that's, a little bit of a RevOps philosophy here as well. And we try to do this by at Karger by actually putting circles to work, and these are cross-functional teams across production, customer support, regional offices, and product managing units. And there's a specific circle, we call it circle, it's called the experience circle. And we really put customer experience front and center in this working group. And we define projects, and we really ask the question, what does it mean, customer experience? And if you do these things, and if you not remain siloed, that's when you're going to see impact.
So, I mean, yeah, more people adapting, technology being a big part of it. Now, obviously, you've been in this space for a very, very long time. I mean, you know this frontwards and backwards. You know customer centricity when you see it. You know RevOps when you see it. Have you always been this way? I mean, how'd you get your start? I mean, what brought you along this path?
Well, I wish I could answer that question with yes, but I would be lying because it's everyone makes their own experiences, and I made experiences the hard way. I've been in organizations where, even in small organizations where there've been silos, I've experienced what that means, right? And I've experienced working in organizations that do not put customer centricity first. And I think it's also the realization over the last decade, I would say, working as a marketing leader, that it's not just about growth on one end of the funnel. It's not just about lead generation. It's not just about lead capture in the old way. And it's not just about demand generation. It's about a sustainable growth of your organization. And that's what I've learned, right? And what that really means is you have to look at it across the board. Sure, it's important to collect new leads and build your funnel. For which organization is that not important? Of course it is. But you have to look at your customers as well. And a lot of organizations that I've worked for, a lot of customers that I've worked for, they're singly minded, focused on the top of the funnel, of the new funnel, and they neglect their existing customer relations because they think it's somehow in an automated way, it's going to take care of itself. Yeah. But it's not. And those organizations, and what I've learned is, as a marketer, you really need to focus across the board. And if you have limited bandwidth, you're better off focusing 150% on your customers and making sure that you meet and exceed their expectations. And then the funnel will fall into place because your customers will do the job of recommending your organization for you. And you shouldn't entirely rely on that, but I'm not saying you shouldn't plan for your funnel and you shouldn't do proper demand generation for your funnel, but do it across the board. Grow your organization across the board in a sustainable way. And that means, by definition, focusing on the customer and taking it seriously. And that's a big lesson I've learned as a growth marketer. So, and when you do that, things like messaging, product market fit become really, really important, more important than all the technology, the operations, the demand funnel, and all of that.
So, I mean, it's a very introspective way of looking at it. Obviously, I mean, there's, you've come a long way from, to get to that point. You
Right.
can tell. I mean, did you have mentors and stuff like that who helped you, along the way to get to get this school of thought, or was it more just kind of self-directed? How was it? How was the journey?
Of course, there's always mentors. I mean, in everybody's life, there are mentors. And by the way, I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to give back and mentor other people because I think it's really critically important to do that and to give back. And yes, I had mentors and they were, one in particular, he was very instrumental in just showing how it's done, right? It's not necessarily um, telling me. It's just he was leading a sales and marketing organization in a way that it's just very apparent that there was transparency and very little silos and communication and the right culture. And if that falls into place, magical things can happen, I can tell you. And the best teams in the world, they're really, really focused and customer-centric and motivated. They all have one thing in common. They have the right culture. And somebody at the top, somebody in the leadership sets this culture. And that's very underestimated by a lot of leaders out there who want to be successful. And if you do that, and if you do that right, and I've learned that from these mentors, then the sky's the limit. Magical things really will happen, and you have fun along the way. Something that you also should be doing. Life is short, right?
Yeah. So Mitja, what do you do for fun? Like, what is your guilty pleasure when you got to fun along the way, like you're saying? What's your guilty pleasure?
I like to travel. I like to read, and I don't get to do much, but by being fun, by having fun, I also meant having fun in your work environment, right? And
Sure.
not just separate the fun and the work. If you don't have fun doing your work, then you're doing something wrong. Life is too short for this, and that's also, and that it circles back to culture there, right? If somebody sets the right culture, then these things are just fun. And there's a reason why I came into marketing, because it's fun to do certain things and I enjoy it. And if that's sort of a culture that's enabled, then a lot of things will be possible because your team will be motivated to do these types of things. And that's the secret sauce. It sounds easy. It's not in reality, because if it was, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah, and it's like it's almost like what you talked about with customer centricity and with RevOps. And they're easy things to talk about in theory, very, very difficult to actually get done. Who's going to say, well, I'm not customer centric, I don't care about my customers or about revenue operations? Or who's going to say it? No one's going to say that, right? But
Not
actually doing your actions will define whether you actually will do it or not. So it's interesting how you tied culture back to doing culture and doing the work are knowing them and doing them are two very different things. It's interesting how you tied the two of them.
Well, I think and maybe that's something to say in general as well. There's lots of focus on tactics and lots of focus on operations and technology. And as important as all of these things are, again, the culture underlies everything, and the leadership is everything. And based on that, you build a messaging that resonates with your customer's story. I mean, let's face it, if you don't really solve a problem for your customer, and if you don't have a product market fit, and then it's going to be hard for marketing and for sales to make an impact. That's the way it is. And you have to build that story. And it's one of the most important foundational things marketing can do. And it's not about the KPIs. It's not about the stats. It's not about the operations. For and foremost, it's about that. And then those become important. I'm not saying they're not important. Of course they are, but at a later stage, and not to the degree that I think a lot of people will put emphasis on it.
Got it. But where can people get a hold of you? Where can they learn more about you or connect with you on?
Well, I think they should just check me out on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm open to connections, and happy to sort of to accept, messages and requests there if they're really not sales focused or not obviously sales focused, but more focused on practice. I'm sharing a lot more content um, going forward about the publishing world, about science. I'm excited about that. I have some plans, some content plans to talk about science also with Karger publishers. So there's some stuff coming there, and I'd like to just ask viewers to take a look at my LinkedIn profile and visit us at Karger Publishers. We've just launched a new website.
Yeah, and then the URL is kargerpublishers.com.
No, it's Karger.com.
Karger.com. Got you. So that for everybody listening, it's KARGER.com. And yeah, so look, Mitja, it's been amazing to talk to you. I mean, you have a wide depth of knowledge on how to do RevOps and customer centricity, make them the same, and how to break down those silos like you were talking about. You talked a lot about the culture of marketing and making sure that is part of it. Because if you don't have fun doing this, you will never be able to really deliver for your customer. I mean, your background is very, very unique in terms of how you work in an educational company. It's not just for tech people, RevOps. So, you kind of head on all those things. And I just cannot thank you enough for, your time and jamming with me today on this stuff.
Sajeel, it was a pleasure being with you, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, anytime. And, we'll have to do it again soon. If anybody was listening, if you've learned something today or maybe laughed a little, tell someone about the show. And yeah, thanks again, Mitja, for coming on.
Thank you.
This has been another exciting episode of RevOps 500, and we'll see you guys all next time. Take care. And that wraps up another episode of RevOps 500. Thanks for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at RevOps500.com. RevOps 500 is sponsored by CompuTech, providing technical and development expertise to growth-focused marketing teams.